Up next, the performance mandate. Please welcome our panelists to the Hunter main stage.
You're unbelievable.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? All 5 of you. Thank you so much for sticking around. I got to tell you, I'm Glenn Hausman, and all those people leaving right now are suckers because they're going to miss out on the best panel of the day. So let's bring everybody in over here and welcome to the stage. Can we get the countdown timer going, please? All right. I'm Glenn Hausman once again. Please, I do the No Vacancy podcast. Please follow me on the LinkedIn. Right next to me, I got Mr. Tom Gachet of Davidson Hospitality Group. Let's hear it for Tom over here.
One clap.
I know. Then we got next to him my friend Phil Yu from Sonesta. Let's hear it for Phil.
We got a full house.
The legend.
Then representing HHM Hotels, the awesome, incredible Naveed Karkala. Let's hear it for Naveed.
You're our walk-up music.
What's that?
You're our walk-up music.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We need some good funky walk-up music. And I'm very excited today because I've never had a chance to work with this gentleman before, and I'm sure before long he's going to wish we never did. Let's welcome the president of Ambridge Hospitality, Chris O'Donnell, over there. Yeah.
Chris, you can direct most of your questions at Chris then.
Yeah. All right, let's direct all the questions at Chris, and well, how about we go down to the bar, and Chris just takes over here. So
Had we known, we could have said complimentary cocktails for everybody in this session.
Right.
That's easy. Get around
like
to drinks
that.
for everybody to get going.
Yeah. All right. So Chris, I will start with you, and I'll work our way down, and then just feel free to jump in whenever you can. How are you feeling right now about like the relationship between brands, folks like you in management, and owners out there?
I feel good about it. I can't say anything different. I'm just kidding. No,
Yeah.
I think it's great. You know, listen, when you look at any partnership, and I think you have to look at brands, owners, management companies as such that it's shared priorities, and you have to understand what those priorities are. And when you do, the more successful that you are. And so, you know, certainly that's the goal, is to understand what everybody is most important to them, and then try to deliver, which is what we do in hospitality every day.
Yeah, I love it. Naveed, how are you feeling about the state of relationships these days?
This is what it's like to go after Chris. I see, because I tend to agree. Now what am I going to do?
Yeah, well, now I would say what you should do is answer, but use the word elemental in a sentence.
That wasn't one of them.
Yeah, no, I had to mix it up.
So I think those of us on the panel here, frankly, have an advantage because we've been in the industry for long enough, and we've had these relationships for long enough that we could have an honest conversation when we are in conflict. And the reality is that, you know, owners, managers, brands, you sometimes have different priorities, and you sometimes have similar priorities. But to me, the energy's really been around how you raise the ask when you have an ask, and with whom you're able to make a request, and frankly, sharing a goal of not trying to stunt or make noise for the sake of making noise, but to offer a solution that might work for everyone. So I feel like it's almost unfair to be on the panel, because to be on the panel means that you've been in the industry for a period of time and you've got good brand relationships, and the only thing I will tell you is we cash those chips all the time, but you're also working hard to kind of accumulate chips when you need them. And so more recently, where we are in the industry and the economy, there's been more tension around CapEx, around some of the different brand requirements, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But you could either kind of like flail around wildly just to make noise, or you could offer a balanced approach to it. And to be honest, we're heard out. And in some cases where you disagree, you agree to disagree. But it doesn't feel like you don't have a seat or you don't have a voice, or you get what you get kind of energy. I don't feel that.
That's most important. I will say I've been in the business now for 30 years, and I've been basically hearing the same story over and over between owners and big franchise companies and all of that. And you don't necessarily get the reality of what's going on. And the fact is, I'm hanging out with these guys backstage. Everybody knows each other. We're all in it together. And that's really what I love about this hospitality industry. But Phil, I mean, saying we're all in it together and acting as if we're all in it together, how are you trying to approach relationships with folks, particularly as you've got a heightened focus now on the ABVI brand?
Yeah, exactly. I think the key to it, we've talked about relationships, and it is truly diving into that relationship with trust and transparency and making sure that we understand what you need as an individual company. The issue is you can't just treat everybody with a broad stroke. Everyone's needs for growth or challenges on the day-to-day operation of the hotel are different. So we as the brand have to listen. We have to be engaging to them rather than reactionary. And I think way too many times you're coming to us or the brand in general with an issue where we should be coming to you. And I think as we get into the AI word we're not supposed to talk about in technology.
Yeah, I said we're not allowed to use the words AI
all the
or
words we're not allowed to
experience on
talk
this
about.
panel, so.
No, I think that will allow us to be more engaging and allow some of the issues for us to be forward thinking for you rather than just being reactionary that you have a problem. We don't want to hear about challenges on the revenue side after the fact. We want to be looking forward saying, we see what's happening here. We were just talking about Dallas, and it was an economy hotel, and the market in South Dallas was down like $7 in RevPAR over the last 3 years. And I'm like, well, why would we sell a franchise there? And then I started looking like, oh, we've got World Cup has 12 events that are coming up. Dallas has been a little challenged, and wow, this might be something that we should do. But we're really looking at it and saying, let's not add a brand in a location where we're not going to be really successful and help them grow.
So, we're talking about this back and forth and together. So give me one real example of when you listened to your owners out there and were able to make proactive change. I'd like to move from philosophy to reality,
I think it happens every day where owners are challenged with the hotel. They've got debt coming due. They have a renovation coming up that, COVID stalled renovations for a period of time.
Yeah.
And now they're sitting there with a huge PIP in front of them. Their debt is coming due, a lot of the CMBS, and they kind of go, how do we fix that?
Well, the good news is the economy is going great, and it seems like everything's going to be perfect
It's
going forward.
It's easy out there right now. But I think you listen to them and you say, okay, what's the solution? A lot of times they're selling the hotel for an alternative use. Then they have damages. So how do you work through those situations where it becomes a win for them and for us as a brand, rather than just hammering them and saying no?
Right.
And I think that there are, you say it was interesting. You say it's great with the brands, but there's a lot of conversations that we have every day with owners like, look, I'm not happy with my brand. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I hate my brand. I want to go spend millions of dollars to change the signage and get out of this and rebrand the hotel. You just don't. So it has to be, when they change, there has to be an issue why.
Yeah.
And if we're smart, we're engaging them before it happens.
Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to say that agree with everything that they've said. I think it's an interdependent relationship that certainly the operator owner has with the brand.
It almost feels like conjoined twins.
Well, a little bit, but I'll give you a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
The brands have spent billions of dollars over creating a distribution system, creating a loyalty program, creating tools, standards, everything else. It's our job as an operator to be experts at those tools, how to use those tools, and how to drive performance with those tools. And the brands provide a lot of opportunities for us to do that. But every hotel's not made the same. So a brand tries to do their level best to make sure there's consistency across the brand. In a world that's not consistent, in markets that aren't consistent, in buildings that aren't consistent. So that drives those conversations that Naveen was talking about, where you don't know, the owner and brand may not have to agree, but that's when you go back to the relationship to see how you do it. You asked for a real-time example. We have a hotel here in Atlanta, and the design is very urban in nature. It's more industrial type, and it's in that part of the city, in the West Midtown market. And the design called for concrete ceilings and not a finished ceiling in the room, which was really cool, edgy, it was great. The brand that we chose for that asset, it was not allowable by the brand standards. They said, can't do it. You've got to have a finished ceiling in this hotel. And so we took someone from the brand design team.
Right.
We went to New York City and we toured them through a selection of independent hotels that all had concrete ceilings that were very cool, doing really well, and were out-indexing their market set.
Interesting.
And after that 2-day trip around New York City, they approved it, said no problem, and we have a hotel today that's got concrete ceilings. It's an awesome hotel. It's the Belliard Hotel in West Midtown. But the brand saw the light there and said, okay, we'll make this work.
That's interesting. So, Chris, you really have to balance a lot of things, right? You want to have the best hotel possible, but brands not only they have those minimum standards, but they have those maximum standards too, because otherwise you can't have a coherent conversation with the customer, right? They don't get an understanding of specifically what that brand is about. So how are you, negotiating that to try to make your hotels in the best shape as possible, try to live within those brand standards, but also try to make sure they're flexible for the individual hotel needs?
Sure. I mean, start with the end. The individual hotel needs, it's going to vary greatly by the market, by the customer base that you have, by the owner's goals for the asset as well. So that again goes back to the conversations that you have to have is what are the objectives here? Obviously, you need to meet the minimum standards because we have a responsibility when you enter into that partnership with the brands to maintain those standards. But then, yes, I think you really have to, that's where your expertise as an operator comes in, where you understand your market and you understand your customer base. And then you're able to make those recommendations. And when they show that they help you get to where you want to be faster, they help you get to that return on that investment, then that's the credibility that you need to have to keep going forward.
Right, that makes sense. And Naveen, we were talking a little bit about how generous the brands were when it came to PIPs during that horrible time 6 years ago when we were not able to convene in this room. They were really good about that. And obviously, in order to maintain standards, they're coming on harder now with the PIPs, which could put some hoteliers into a complicated situation. So how are you negotiating that? I'm sure all your hotels are up to snuff, but there's this understanding, but also the same, it's got to be good in order to make everybody satisfied. So,
I'm scared for anyone who couldn't hear your sarcasm. I'm terrified.
I think everybody heard it.
I think there are two types of conversations. There are some where it's only good for you and it's not good for the brand.
Right.
Right? And there are others where it's okay to create a bit of an exception. And it sometimes depends on the profile of that hotel or the guest scores of that hotel. And what I've noticed is that there are two different energies, right? The first is, you're right, that we're 6 years into delaying certain things in hotels for all the right reasons, and everyone agrees. But the system requires that you lift service scores. And so if you came from outer space and you looked, you'd say, it probably makes sense at that hotel to do a renovation.
Right.
Because it's deteriorating the look of that brand across the portfolio, right? Those are harder. Frankly, you have very little leverage, but for negotiating time or some of the things that are not apparent to a consumer. So you can't talk about deferred maintenance and loan modifications and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you've got good service scores and you've got high rate and you've got market share, similar to the ceiling conversation that Tom was sharing, you really are able to sit down and negotiate the phasing of these renovations. We are still able to negotiate the timing of these renovations. And while no one puts a sign up that says it's okay, because of financial reasons you can move things around, you just have to do your part. And I feel like that's market share and guest scores. And you often hear, well, scores don't matter. Owners would want to say that in certain stressful situations, but they do matter when it comes to reno.
Right.
And so if there's one thing that really gives you leverage, it's talking about your market share and your guest scores being the reason why you can delay, maybe not get out of. Now, the other side of the coin, that first part where you really don't have a lot of leverage, some of these hotels that I would have expected to be required to PIP are still waiting. And so you're going to have a market where hotels are coming available primarily for this. And it's hard because construction costs have gone up and it's harder to forecast and estimate the pricing. But some of what you're hearing at the conference about buying opportunities and people starting to pay more attention, some of those are really driven by loan mods and PIPs. And so there's a big buyer's opportunity coming up.
Yeah, I know, it's very difficult. And to be fair, I think we've been talking more about the harder brands, right? That have much more delineation of what those standards are. Of course, we got soft brands, independent hotels, all of those things that still work within the brand ecosystem. So Phil, how are you thinking about approaches with the different types of product versus those PIPs and making sure you have consistency while creating a scenario so your owners can thrive?
And I think one of our taglines is fast, friendly, and flexible.
Yep.
And I think flexibility is key. The review scores that you just mentioned are critical. It's the first thing we look at. The guest is going to tell you what you need to do.
Right.
You'll see it in the reviews. Just looked at a hotel last week, and every review was not a bad place, a little dated if they just replaced the carpet. So we go in and say, look, day one, you've got to replace the carpet, and let's talk about the other things that need to take place. Because I don't like brown, or our brand manager doesn't like a brown stone in the bathroom, doesn't actually mean that it needs to be ripped out.
I thought that was a very thoughtful comment of mine.
Yeah, so come on. So I think it is, it's working with the owners, and they've invested, you said it earlier, millions and millions of dollars in these hotels. And when I see owners just ignore them, and they continue to deteriorate, you sit down with the ownership and go, we don't get it, because it is going to end up as a fire sale and an opportunity for someone. And we're seeing it probably mostly in select service and on the full service side, where there's a lot of hotels that are in that position, and now they're looking for a change, and the acquisition prices are quite attractive, and a lot are going back to the bank as well.
Is it owners? You think owners are wanting to ignore it, or you think they're in a financial distress situation that's created a circumstance where they
Majority
are now
of what
ignoring
I see, it's not an owner. It's a group that they're at their 10th or 15th year of the investment. The debt's coming due. That investment group doesn't want to put the money in to do a PIP.
Yep.
So they need fresh capital. How do they get the existing ownership out? So they're stuck.
Yeah.
They're stuck.
Well, one of the things that we love in our industry is to draw conclusions about the entire industry when it's not appropriate to. Kind of like, when we look at all the national statistics that you guys all sat through, that's the country. That has nothing to do with what's going on in your street corner. And that's what this is really all about. So, Tom, how are you working through some of these issues? And, some hotels are going to be the best. Some owners have horrible owners, and some don't care. I know you're a conscientious owner out there.
Yeah, we self-professed, conscientious.
Yeah.
Listen, it's difficult because, and Chris mentioned it, there's different investment horizons and different investment goals. And so some of your owners are investors that want a long haul, and they want to be there for a long period of time. Others want to buy something, reposition it, maybe sell. And so you have to align what the brand might want you to do with the market and what your owner's expectations are. But we operate in the upper upscale space to near luxury space. And in that space, we have a lot more levers. So, food and beverage is a big part of what we do.
Right.
Huge part of what we do. A lot of the ancillary things. So there's spas and retail and membership clubs and beach clubs and things like that. And so creating those unique, I won't use the word experiences because you said we can't.
No, I know. It's been banned.
Creating stays.
I would say
that
opportunities to get closer to the customer's pocketbook.
Yeah, that's right. But also aligning that, it has gotten more difficult.
Yep.
I don't know, how many brands do you guys have?
13, but really 12 because ABVI and CBVI are the same.
13 but 12. But you got 36 brands with Marriott and 30 brands with Hilton. And for us, we're in the business trying to understand the difference between one brand or the other.
One brand gets $86 a night, the other gets $88 a night.
It's really tough. And then taking the assets you have and the market you have and try to position that perfectly. You're really threading a pretty tight needle sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's where it can get confusing. But I've found the brands to be very cooperative in most instances with that.
Yeah.
You rarely can't get something done if you want. What we do typically is we underwrite multiple different ways. If we're looking to acquire a property or take it over, we'll look at an independent scenario, we'll look at a branded scenario, we'll look at a soft branded scenario, whatever's available in that particular market, and then just line those up and see what makes the most sense for this.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely logical and makes sense. But Chris, I'm curious as to what you're thinking. How are you translating like a strong brand vision into something that's actually operationally successful at the property level?
You know, the advent of technology, I won't say AI. Was I allowed to say technology? I can't remember. There was a couple words that were kind of on the edge. I think it can sometimes overcomplicate what we do. Our business in general isn't complicated. Right. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's not a complicated business. And so to operate successfully, I think you have to first be able to boil that down into really simple metrics that everybody understands and have the same metrics across all of your portfolio, so that way you can really build that sense of achieving goals, but also the accountability to those goals. You know, we've really spent a lot of time in Aimbridge doing just that. Whereas if you allow it to kind of take its own course, there's a million things that can end up being priorities, and they're different priorities for different people, and you know, you can really let it get quickly out of hand, and focus really becomes a challenge for your businesses. But if you take a step back, and everybody in this room knows, there's a handful of metrics that really matter. They matter to owners, they matter to the brands, and they matter to the operators, and it's 4 or 5 things. And so what we try to do is build out, here's your goals within those 5 buckets for each one of our hotels, and then help those guys get there. Clear barriers to the success. And the most important role in a hotel is the general manager, because the general manager is the one that makes sure everything happens. No matter what we do at the global support center that we have, or in anybody that's managing a hotel, it really comes down to that leader in the business. They create the culture. And so if you give them those tools to say, this is what matters, this is what's important, and let them run with it, I find that to be the most successful.
I love that, because the brands are really good at getting people in the door. But once they get in the door, you've got to create an atmosphere of love to make sure that they feel embraced. So a little off-ball question for you. How many hours a day should a general manager be in the office versus walking around their property?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. Listen, as little as possible, right? The business is out. There was a study done once, which was really interesting. If you were to take, on a 24-hour scale, and you were to map out the amount of time that the most people are in the building, right? So if you say, you kind of let that scale go up, right? So the majority of the people are in the building when the fewest amount of managers are there.
Right. Right.
And
And
they're all there overnight, and none of the leaders are in the building. And so when our leaders are there, the more time they can spend out engaging with their teams and engaging with the guests, the more successful you're going to be. So it really is incumbent upon us as leaders is to find as many of those barriers that are getting their way to doing that. And unfortunately, technology can become that, right? Hey, here's a great new report. I want you to go spend it, digest it, and I want you to come back to me and tell me how you're going to use it differently. You know, and then now I want you to do this report. Now I want you to look at this. And sooner or later, you've created an environment where your leaders are no longer leading the hotel. So I can't give you an hour.
No, I get you. But I like your answer, because it really goes back to the whole philosophy of hospitality. Stop doing things and get out there and be with your people. Make your staff feel amazing. Make the guests feel amazing, and giving everyone a sense of empowerment and success. So Naveen, how are you bringing brand vision to the property level so you could be operationally successful?
So I first thought, when you asked earlier of Chris, I thought about branded hotels versus independent hotels. So if I take the harder one, which are independent hotels for us, we end up having to do a lot of what the brands do, if I'm honest about it, where we create a customer journey. We acknowledge the fact that we have sometimes 50% plus turnover at the front desk on an annual basis. Yeah. You realize that people are coming from a background onto that front desk, not with shared experiences. And so you need to make sure that you kind of catch everyone up. And so if you start with this idea that no one took your job knowing all the things you need from them, and one of the priorities is making sure that they could answer the question if you went up to the front desk and said, what is Signia and why does it matter? And so we actually learned from the brands there, because what I took for granted were all of the learning modules and the training requirements, and used to make fun of the fact that sometimes you needed 2 weeks before you could pick up the phone at a front desk. Well, when we used to throw people on in an hour, we realized they actually didn't know how to answer all of the needs. And they certainly couldn't answer the question of what is this brand. And so we ended up doing a lot of brand books and customer journeys. We overdid it, we underdid it. We used different videos and things that we thought would be effective. They weren't. We did kind of train the trainer kind of stuff that were effective at times. But in general, we needed to articulate what each hotel was. And then we needed to simplify that in a way that the average person like me could memorize.
Yeah.
And live that experience, and then could get back to being clean and friendly. Sometimes when we overdid it, we'd want everyone to learn about every piece of art. And then when you asked them what it was, they got kind of confused as to how they were going to tell the story. And so to me, the test is if you took the average person who has been in your hotel for 30 days to 6 months and you ask them what that brand is about, they need to be able to answer that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not, maybe, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but it's really accepting the idea that it's our responsibility to define it and to teach it. And then it's the general manager's responsibility to evangelize and memorialize and drive consistency.
Yeah, and one of the things I like now is there's a whole lot more of these micro-learning tools that are coming on that help reinforce what the brand is all about and giving associates those little hints and tools to be successful. But as at a brand, how are you helping your hoteliers deliver on what the brand is successfly?
I think one is that all those modules and those training tools were designed for a purpose.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the number of times they're not accessed by the general manager or by the owner. So it's like, okay, we go through all this.
I've been to a lot of brand
time and
conferences.
energy.
I've seen that.
And it's like, I didn't know that. Well, it's created for a reason. So I'll go back into where I think AI is really going to help, and it's going to reduce friction. It reduces friction at the front desk because a lot of the questions that need to be answered, like I need towels or I need to make a dinner reservation, can be handled by that. Then allowing your general manager to be out on property more, right? From a franchisor perspective, the little questions that, we don't really want to go look in the standards manual what it is, AI can answer those that then allow our operations people from answering phones, answering questions that are in the book, right, or out there to be answered, or the module they can refer you to. We can be out there looking at trends, looking at things that are happening in your market, and creating service and being proactive. Then again, back to that, the brands I think are so reactionary because they're just coming at you all the time. So how do we lean into AI to give you answers quicker and then really be more proactive as the franchisor to provide service? We went out, he had mentioned all the brands, but we came out with, after COVID, Sonesta came out with the acquisition of Red Lion, with like 23 brands. Well, we strategically went through every one. We sunsetted 10, and we have 13 brands. None of them compete. They're in their swim lane. We don't want them to overlap. We don't want a $2 spread in RevPAR. It doesn't work for us. We are operators. We own and manage hotels from the select service up to luxury, and we don't want to be competing with ourselves, so we try to pass that along to our franchisees.
I will say, I think there's a huge Achilles heel in our industry where we look at these swim lanes from the owner point of view and what we'll do for franchise fees as opposed to how customers view our brands. They don't know the difference between this brand that's here and this brand that's here and this brand that's here. They're just booking on price and location alone, right? So you're under margin pressures and stuff like that, for example, right? So how are you thinking about what that relationship looks for, what you need now compared to a couple of years ago?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. It's, I don't know who said it earlier, but our business is hard.
Yeah.
And we have to look at it from both lenses, unfortunately. The owner lens is if it's not for active ownership in our industry dies. So you have to look at it from the owner lens. Brands are a way to help create value in what you do, and that goes back to how you sort of work together. I think, though, that with the margin pressures that we're seeing, it's just, I'll use the word relentless. You have to be relentless in every single part of what we do. It is no longer a group strategy. It's no longer a labor strategy. It's a everything strategy every day. You have to attack every market segment. You have to attack every distribution channel. You have to attack every group strategy you have. You have to attack everything on the food and beverage side to make sure and look at each one of your revenue lines, each one of your businesses, each one of your revenue lines on your P&L as a business itself to be profitable.
Yeah.
And how do you make that better? And sometimes it means repricing every day. Sometimes it means changing your menu mix every day.
Right.
Sometimes when something happens in the market, you have to change your menu to get a more profitable flow out of that. So the business has gotten very complicated, but we have to think through the owner lens, because that's really what matters. If people aren't investing in hospitality, it kills the brands, it kills the brokers, it kills the lenders, it kills the operators. I mean, people have to invest in our business. So we have to be investable. So that owner lens, I'm not pushing the guest aside.
Right,
because
totally.
the guest is on paying the tab. But when you're looking at, you asked the question about the swim lanes and the different brands, what matters most to that is the owner lens. Now, the guest, they need a great experience.
Right.
Clean, comfortable, they got to get the story, they got to understand the journey. We have to deliver that as operators, make sure whatever the brand is,
Right.
we have to make sure we're delivering that incredible stay where they have fun, where they enjoy it.
Right.
But when you talk specifically about the brands and the difference of the brands, you have to really use that owner lens, because that's who's pumping money in our business to make it work.
Yeah, and the brands should be held responsible for creating standards that do have a return on investment. And I know at Sonesta, we're not in a dark room in the corner of the building where the brand standards people are just creating things. We create them, they say, hey, we think this will provide value. The research shows it'll put more heads in beds, and then you roll it out. But you can't roll it out without going and having conversations with your franchisees.
Right.
At one point in time, how many breakfast items do you need?
Dude, I was just about to bring
How
up
many do you
breakfast.
need? I mean,
Yeah.
how many items do you need? Do you need 37, 24, 6? Should it be based on
I say
occupancy?
76.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So-
if you are gonna compete on breakfast, let's get an extra waffle machine or two, so I don't have to get stuck watching that kid for 5 minutes overflow the waffle machine.
I mean, what is
That's entertainment.
I know.
and breakfast? We're on it for a little bit. We can beat it to death, but it's also market driven. What's the competition doing? How are you going to compete in it? And then why, if it's against the brand standard, go have a conversation and say, look, this is what we need to be successful, or we don't need all of this because there's a Denny's out front, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Chris?
Different in your world, but
Yeah.
The other place where I think the brands can really help us impact is at the start of the customer journey from acquisition. The way folks are buying now, and when you talk about AI, I think this is a good place to put that in there, right? AI searches very differently than the traditional search. So the traditional brand websites, which are, if I may say kindly to any of my brand friends here, inflexible, right? They're pretty static in terms of how you can
Yeah, and
put
it
them
really
together.
frustrates me when I go on the
that was
website
kind.
and it says like museum 5 miles. Like, well, that does not help me with my stay.
And so, folks that are searching now are utilizing that AI search functionality in order to start their customer journey. And so as the brands evolve there, and I know it's a big ship to turn, but that's where there will be tremendous value for owners and for operators. Because let's face it, our businesses are pretty buttoned up in terms of the bottom line. Could we always perform better?
Right.
Yes, we could. But there's not a whole lot of saving towards prosperity when revenues are down. You have to keep adding to the top. And the way that you can really do that is by leveraging the way that folks are starting their journey these days through.
That's a great
automation.
point, Chris. And let me say to you folks out there, and I love it because I was saying, like, I hope we go to a different direction than we didn't expect. And I did not expect to talk about this particular issue at all today. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up. Search is changing big time right now. And I see some older people in the room. You remember after 9/11, we didn't understand the internet, but Expedia did, and other sites did, and they came in and they maximized their opportunity because we didn't have an understanding of how to leverage that opportunity. They're our valuable partners to help put heads in beds, but now there's another chance to recapture the guest's imagination and get them to book directly because things are changing through artificial intelligence and the way that we can connect through customers through Gemini and ChatGPT and others. What do you think the brand should be doing to make sure then your hotels are being seen in this new way of doing things and we don't get lost like we did in 2001, 2002?
The most interesting thing is there is a quiet competition behind closed doors between the brands and the intermediaries, again, over this issue. So if we used to talk about search engine optimization, which is where you're going, now it's GEO instead of SEO, right? And everyone says they don't really know exactly how the formulas work, but you kind of do know that if you have chat and you have blogs and you have bulletin boards, all the stuff we were actively doing 15 years ago before streamlining, you're more likely to pick up because the LLMs tend to value peer feedback, consumer feedback versus marketing materials. And so I do think that we're going to go back to having conversational peer-to-peer TripAdvisor type of reviews being more valued than they are today. There's a second piece, I think there's one group, I just forgot who it was, that just partnered with ChatGPT, where they're money-making enterprises. I don't care how it started. And it is costing, $1.5 million or more dollars in order to have priority. And so do you know how different booking sites will make you pay for priority? There's going to be a marketplace that the brands, the OTAs, and the independents are going to have to grapple with in terms of who's going to buy market share within those pieces, because
Somebody will.
someone is going to want the money that we're willing to pay in order to be found first, even if it's a different kind of technology. To me, the scariest piece is the binary piece, which is if you say, tell me the best hotels in Atlanta, right now I'm used to getting a list of 70, but you're going to give me 3?
Yeah.
To try to be in the top 3, if you switch that to tell me the best hotels near the stadium, it's still going to only give you 3, and you've got 30. And so it's really intimidating to consider how you will get positioning without a lot of activity behind the scenes to tell your story conversationally around why you picked that hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom?
I think here the too is where a little bit of brand magic is going to help.
Yeah.
There's another not so behind closed doors race going on, and that's the loyalty race. Marriott's close to 300 million Bonvoy members. Hilton's not far behind.
Right.
Hyatt just announced in their earnings call, I think 63 or 65 million of that. So the brands have put a real focus on this to push and drive that loyalty piece.
Yep.
As operators, listen, the loyalty customer is typically books direct, which is your cheapest channel to book. The stats say they spend more when they're on property because they're loyal to the brand, whatever else. So there's this race going on to kind of grow that loyalty. And those are customers that we know. The brands own that data, but we have access to it, we know them. So as operators, we got to really take advantage of that, make sure we're marketing the right way, using those things to sort of to drive it. But it's been, it's been unbelievable, the push that's been put on by the brands, and we don't have any Synestis. I don't know where you guys are in that race, but it's there's a lot of effort being put into that to try to own that guest.
Yeah.
So you can direct your business as much as you can without having to go to too many of the outside channels if you can and get that direct.
If you can, but my concern, and feel free to follow up with me after this or tell me to F off. I'm finding that like
The latter.
all the brands are out there. They tout how many members they have, right? But how many are actually loyalty members versus people that signed up for a program? And I think that we're not being honest with ourselves when we look at the people that are really loyal, because if I'm in every single hotel loyalty program, am I really loyal to any hotel company? And I don't think we're thinking about that.
Does it matter as long as you book through one of those? So
No,
am as well.
right, I hear what you're saying.
I am as well. I've got a frequent
But I will
travel
always
for every
book
one of them.
direct.
But I'll book direct because of it,
Yeah.
through their app or through whatever.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter if I'm brand loyal or not. It's the fact that I'm using the app to book directly and not have
That's a great answer and makes me very happy. Phil?
I've got so much to cover here, but
right,
I don't know where to
well,
start.
we got 15 minutes,
I got
so go
15
for it.
minutes. I'm ready. I think one, the brands continue to invest in technology. You have to, we're revamping everything again.
Yeah.
Right? And we've done it in 2020 when we took everything back and started. But it's about who that partner is, right? Everyone talks about it, as you're watching everything on TV, who's your AI partner? Well, who are you partnering with, and who are the strongest partners that are going to help you succeed to your goals? We're not a technology company.
Right.
Okay, we're just not, and no brand really is. So you have to really look at who's their distribution and who are they partnering with. Then you have to look at, what are the tag-on companies that are out there? There's hundreds of them competing for our business right now to help drive business direct back to the brands. Like a company like Journey is now going, hard, and they do a fabulous job.
They're focused on the customer journey.
On the customer journey,
right.
But it helps you on the property level as well to tell that local story, right? To book it directly. So it continues to change, and as soon as you think you caught up, we're behind.
Yeah, totally. And that's really, really frustrating, a problem every one of us has. So let me ask you, before I move on to you guys over there, how much of your technology strategy is driven by what your operators are saying versus what you think they should be doing?
So I'm glad I'm not in charge of IT.
Yeah.
And not our chief information officer, but we've got a really fantastic guy that, and Jeff Edwards, that just joined us a month ago. I think you met him when you were in Boston a few weeks ago, and he's really listening. He's not only listening. I'm the growth development side of the business, right? I've owned hotels. I still own hotels, and so I've got that mindset of an owner when I'm out here doing it. But Jeff does that too. Yeah. He's really listening to owners. I see them bringing them in. He's bringing in our brand partners and saying, look, how are we going to succeed here? How are we actually going to have a return investment? How is there going to be a return on investment from this program? So it is really not only working hand in hand with those partners, but listening to our franchisees and saying, okay, what's important to them?
So Chris, when you work with all the brands and you're focused, how do you actually figure out what's going on at each property in terms of your strategy, and what do you expect the brand to do for your tech strategy, even though you're dealing with a lot of different competing interests?
You should see the wall in my office.
Sticky notes everywhere.
We have practical application. We have some brand representatives that helps us stay ahead of the changing trends and the changing responsibility, the changing brand standards and so forth. But in general, listen, there's definitely nuances to the different brands. It's this single item, this blueberry versus that one, whatever the number may be. But for the most part, there's a lot of similarities to. Thank you. There's a lot of similarities to how they operate. So I think it's making sure that I'm going to go back to what I said before, right? It's really making sure that our general managers, our regional folks understand the brands that they're directly responsible for. When you manage over 70 brands, I think you have to do that. So that's how we approach it at scale.
Yeah, because it's got to be crazy to try to keep tabs on all of these different brands and be able to hit home runs for every single one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
It certainly can be, but again, I'll go. I think the core of it is hospitality. It's the hotel business.
So what we're really talking about then, to answer the question that I asked you, is we're kind of like 98% the same with like a 2% kind of nuances.
We could argue over the percentage, but somewhere in that ballpark.
All right. So I challenge you to argue with me over percents later.
All right, let's do it.
I say 3. All right, Naveed.
Somehow I don't think it's that hard either, strangely. Meaning that some of our brands are more articulated and differentiated than others. So for example, if you have a Westin, you have a very clear sense on food and beverage, on wellness, on bedding, on bathroom. And in other cases where we have a soft brand, Autograph has become more consistent over time around what they expect around food and beverage and some of the training that really does support us, actually, in terms of pulling it through. We talked about front desk, but even in terms of housekeeping and some of the other departments. But to me, I tend to think, when I think about brand compliance almost in what you're talking about, or pull through or differentiation, from a QA lens. And so you really have expertise at the property, and our job is to support that expertise where the brands are already driving their requirements, and you're actually just reinforcing what's inbound. On the other hand, where we have independence, it's harder, because we need to have our own discipline around exactly what we are intending from a wellness or a food and beverage or a gym experience, and what we're doing with turndown and what we mean by breakfast. And so those are the instances for me where you end up actually behaving a bit more like a brand in order to preserve the value that is inside that building.
Right.
And so it's interesting where you're up here and you're asking us questions where you might you might want to say that someone else's branding is wrong, but you realize that we're also branding the requirements from each associate every day for each guest check-in. And so to me, the idea of following guidelines and training around those guidelines is kind of intuitive. It's what we do, and you can read and understand. It's actually just having the discipline to know what you're gonna.
So speaking of discipline, Phil, right? So how are you making sure that brand standards actually elevate hotel performance versus simply adding cost or complexity? And like for me, going back to that breakfast thing, it's like, hey, now we have an expensive signature muffin, and that doesn't really move the bar. No one's staying at a hotel for a signature muffin, in my opinion. I'm sorry, all you muffin lovers. Go.
I just think the conversation's interesting. Are the brands really rolling out that many standards every year that are drastically changing it? I mean, I don't see it happening. I know what comes down the line. We just went through the exercise a few weeks ago that, got to update the brand standards. It's more updating for clarity than it is adding new standards to it. Yeah. And I can tell you, as we went through each brand from Royal down to America's Best Value Inn, we simplified it. Like, do we need a standard around this? What is being changed? Should the chair have wheels or not have wheels? Right. I mean, really, is this a conversation we're spending a lot of time on?
Does that actually matter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's no wheels on my chair here.
Yeah. No. I'm putting that down in the comments.
I'm putting that down, but does it? So it's really about the standards that are going to help the guest return, which is key. Yep. Join your loyalty program. We shrunk our loyalty program down in 2.5 years ago, to 2 million members. We're now over 9. Last year we had 100,000 million members a month. Every month we had 100,000 roll in. And now we're doing, from the growth perspective, we're very disciplined, but we're going after what I'll call force multiplier deals. So we just did 4 resorts in the timeshare space. We're not in the timeshare business, but we are filling their empty inventory. Oh, cool. Brand new resort in Daytona Beach, beautiful place near Disney, 600 rooms in the Poconos. What? Beautiful hotels, but they had a lot of empty inventory, and we looked at that as an advantage for us to grow our resort portfolio. Now we're looking at maybe a relationship in gaming. How do we take our brand global without having to really dive in, because we want to make sure we're taking care of the Americas first before we step out. And so what are those relationships, or what are those partnerships that will allow us to have a force multiplier in getting the Sonesta brand out there, but not having 300 million members and how many are active?
Right. It's still, I find it absolutely crazy that like the major hotel brands were in the casino business back in the 90s, and just before it exploded, they all got out and now are trying to get back into it. Yeah, I don't think you go on the Strip without seeing a partnership these days at all. Tom, we're starting to get down to the end. Is there anything that you want to mention before we head into some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think that the industry's in a great place. We talk a lot about, and a couple times here it was referenced.
Did you define great place?
Good. It was referenced several times, even today. We talk back about impacts on our industry from some of these bigger events. Right. And the pandemic comes up, or the great financial crisis, everything else. We've been through a ton of shocks in our industry. And these shocks are bad. We're going through a little one right now. Who knows what the war is going to matter to us? Oil prices and things like that. All of it impacts.
Hey, the good news is I think more Americans will stay home and stay in your hotels.
We hope so. But all these things impact travel, because it impacts the psyche and everything else. But then you look back at history and you see every time we've had a big impact, we come back stronger, and we come back stronger. But I think what really happens in those instances, and especially germane to this panel, I think our relationships with our owners, with our brands, business partners, frankly competitors, gets better in those times. And we talk a lot about the bad impacts of the pandemic that came out, but I'll be honest with you, lenders, owners, managers, brands all got together. I mean, we looked at each other and I said, okay, we got to make it through this. How are we going to make it better?
It was one of the most incredible experiences that I've been through, seeing how everyone came together.
It came together, and so I think those relationships got better, and I think the brands listen, I think operators, I think owners are listening more, and I agree with you that it's not about new standards the brands are putting. There's a little bit more reasonableness coming to it. What's the common sense approach to this, whether it's a PIP, whether it's anything else? So I think from just, and it's a complicated business.
Yep.
But servicing the guests and trying to do everything we can to make sure our owners are optimizing the value of their assets, everybody is aligned to make sure that
It's funny.
the right way.
It's such a complicated business, but at the end of the day, it's a simple business. Like Chris, you've mentioned multiple times, people taking care of people. We got just a few minutes left. How about some final thoughts, whatever you want to say?
I'm going to sound like an operator here, but I'd like to build on what Tom was just saying. You know, following the pandemic and all the changes that we've had, probably one of the biggest impact to operations were the amount of institutional knowledge that we lost. We lost a lot of folks that had a lot of experience in the business, and in a period of time where more and more jobs are changing because of automation, hospitality still stands as a great opportunity for people. And I think that operators, owners, brands, everybody that's involved in this industry can do ourselves good by educating folks on that, educating young people on that, or educating people that are being displaced or looking for a new start. I mean, I think if you pulled everybody up here, I started as a bellman. You know, there isn't an industry, right? Bellman as well, Tom as well. There isn't an industry where that opportunity exists at such a scale, and that's what I think we have an obligation to try to educate folks on moving forward.
I agree with you. I think our biggest challenge is getting people who have an interest in hotels to know that there's anything above the property level. That's an incredible ecosystem. Please, whatever you preach to young people, tell them whatever it is you love, hospitality has that. Whatever it is. Naveen, final thought?
I love that piece because there are very few industries where if you work hard, you can expect to get the keys to the building within a couple of years. Sometimes it's a burden, sometimes it's an opportunity. And on the other hand, for all that we're talking about at this conference, over the last few years, people have accelerated their own careers, those who have committed and invested in our industry, even faster, because we've promoted more people internally. And some of the people who have been promoted over these last few years, like, wait till you see exactly where they're going to be 10, 15 years from now. So I think telling that story really matters. I think a lot about during, you know, sometimes when there's a shock like the pandemic, everyone does come together because you feel, you know, the fire of it all. But it's harder when you have small shocks, which is kind of what's happened. And I think that's where the fatigue you're sensing across our industry is, because you pull out some cocktails like, oh, and then we had this, and we had this, we had this, we had this. But guess what? Consumer confidence is still correlated to our industry. And even last week, in the week that we referenced, our industry did okay. It's struggling in the middle, but at the very top, and frankly at the very bottom, you have people who still want to travel.
Yep.
And we are still a hedge against inflation. Yep. We are still a domestic travel option across all of our hotels. And people are still going to need travel and vacation and experiences. And so in a way, you could put AI into our business, but you will still have a travel business. And we're part of something that I think will be just fine long term.
Well said. Last thing?
I love what you were saying about it. This business, I started out as a night auditor. I got into operations, and then somebody said something about, you want to go sell franchises? I'm like, what's that? And I've been sort of doing that for 30 years, but it's always been around loving what you do, do it with passion, and follow the golden rule. And there's always another, vertical within the space that you can direct somebody to. If they're not happy behind the front desk, where else can they go? So it's just a fabulous industry to be part of. And then finally, if you're having a challenge with your brand, build a relationship, be very transparent, and pick up the phone, because we're here to serve. At the end of the day, the way we look at it is the franchisee's our customer. Sure, I'm supposed to fill your hotel, but you're my customer. If I take care of you and you at the property level, then you're going to take care of the guest. They're going to become more loyal, and they're going to come back. Okay? There's an intermediary between, the brand and the guest, because you guys are running them every day. So we have to take care of you.
All right, so we're totally out of time, but last thought.
Hospitality will survive any shock, any time, and it always does.
Yep.
And we go back, and I'm now almost 40 years in the business, and different things that have happened. We do come back stronger. But it's because we pour into our people. It's because we create opportunities. And it's because the human spirit wants to get out and travel. And so everybody should talk positively as they can about the industry. Travel often. Get out and experience life the way you want to. And that's what we do. We create opportunities for people every day to have a enjoyable experience. And so it makes it such a great industry.
Excellent. I love it. This is normally where I would get up and do some sort of amazing type of wrap up for all of you guys, but we're out of time, so just picture the amazingness. And meanwhile, let's thank Chris, Naveed, Phil, and Tom. Don't forget me. I'm Glenn. Thank you guys. Really appreciate you.